Smelling the excellence of Rosewood in the 242, wondering what that is a privileged opportunity or is open for all? Pause, think about it with intentional thought, and consider where we go from here. Stay tuned and hear what John Cox got to say about how smelling excellence is available for all. Join our co-sponsors, Paget Investment and Dom Dev, and our friends at Something to Think About with Dale Happy Knowles. Share, and let all your friends know that we're here this evening live in living color. And we'll be right back after this message.
Something to Think About with Dale Happy Knowles.
Welcome to Something to Think About with Dale Happy Knowles. We believe what we think, we become. What we radiate, we attract. And we imagine, we surely can achieve. Let's change the narrative 242. So this evening we have a special honored guest. One of my big brothers. You know, those that we go back from way back in life. And so he's here today to share with us his conceptions as to what should happen, is happening, and why we will become the great Bahamas that we are. Welcome, John Cox.
Welcome. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
You are welcome. You are welcome. Now, I have a little difficulty with my mic because it doesn't want to stand still. Somebody's trying to grab it and run away with it. But I think we'll get through it with that. So what I want to say here is that in your bio, you use a number of creative words, big words, words that are not looking backwards, but looking forward. Imaginarium, independence, kaleidoscope, the, what happened on that? Fecund, imagination, artistry, cultural activism, so sovereignty. Now, they are powerful words. Why those words? Because your bio to me is totally different from what I've ever seen anybody else put in the bio.
Right. I don't know. I don't know if I wrote that bio, which is probably why there's so many fancy words in it, because I'm a pretty simple person. But I don't know, Happy. I think that I think that we don't want to. I don't like to operate from a space of caution. I think we need to be risk takers, right? And I think we need to always be on the edge ourselves, and we need to put ourselves in the right type of discomfort to always be, seeking some kind of solution. So if you play it safe, you play it safe as like playing it mediocre, right? So I don't think anything ever changed from a mediocre posture. So even as it comes to discourse and dialogue and exchange and that kind of stuff, it's interesting to have the dialogue be something that needs to be unpacked. So even words in my bio and stuff like that should be things for people to consider.
Right. That's awesome. Well, you also mentioned in there that some great people by the name of Edmund Moxey, Pat Rahming, Jackson Burnside, and some others that you didn't highlight, but I know who you would be referencing, indicated that yourself and others, and their direct words is that your generation are developing, are developing a creative economy in which the cultural riches of the Bahamas are celebrated and recognized as commercially and economically viable and valuable globally, and so forth. That's very powerful for people of their ilk in their generation to be saying that about the generation that come after them and what they saw in the generation and what you all are able to do creatively. You want to speak to that a little bit?
Yes, I mean, to me, it's like I like to think about everything as like a metaphor, right? It just helps my simple brain kind of understand things better. I see it like a bicycle chain, right? There's like links in the chain. And I think, one of the things that's very important to me is that you recognize how important the opportunities are that you are given. Something above gives you an opportunity. You recognize that you have, I don't want to make it sound too dramatic and say, oh, you have a purpose on the planet. I don't want it to be dramatic, but you do have a purpose on the planet. And if you really kind of sit down and meditate and think about what opportunities you have, I think you realize that you're given an opportunity to do something with the time that you have. And for me, it doesn't start from zero. Like I'm very, very much aware of what I feel most comfortable, what I'm engaged most by, and what I'm good at. And I try to like take those elements and put them together. But what I do recognize is that I have to look at the history. I have to look at the conversation. I'm not starting any new conversation. These people have been doing these things. Edmund Moxey had Jumbe Village and stuff that was 60 years ago, whatever it was. Maybe not 60, but right? Or maybe 60 years ago.
Almost.
Those platforms are not dissimilar from anything that I would have done. And people say, oh, well, John Cox did that thing or next thing. But I'm just looking at these structures and just trying to say, like, kind of like we just need to update these ideas along the way that makes them relevant to the culture, to the time that the culture is in, because it does evolve. And I do think that I'm pro evolution. Which means that's the discomfort I'm always talking about. Like, always want to do something different and let's reimagine this and push this away, or maybe some parts of this we don't need to think about anymore, but let's take something away and add something to it. Yeah, man, I think it's about being aware of your history and being able to participate in a dialogue that is going to contribute to the future. So hopefully someone will come along after you and do it better than you. That's the whole point, right?
Right.
Or better or different or more appropriate, whatever. Not necessarily better. Because I don't think I'm doing anything better than Edmund Moxey. I just think that I look at him, I look at Jackson, I look at all these other folks and listen to the things they say and say, these are all ingredients for what I do.
Well, I'll tell you what a coach of mine said, Coach Frazier, University of Miami. He said, that there's nothing new under the sun, but it's your fingerprints that you put on it that makes a difference in impact on people. Right. And so you could be as mild and meek and kind as you want. People see you in a very high esteem way that some of those persons may not see those who came before you in the same way. I'm not saying that they're not that way, because they have people who follow them also. Right. But I wouldn't take away from yourself and what you have accomplished and impacting lives in here Bahama land. Right? Now you are born free, right? One of the few, I shouldn't say a few, because you're becoming now almost the majority, or you all are the majority in the Bahamas at this point in time. I think you're already cut over. That's the independence babies and beyond, and the new, right? Yeah. Right. So I think you all came over the hump already. But
we're about to be 50.
Yeah. But man, it's the generations that make up the most of our electorate right now.
Right, of the population.
So from that perspective and whatever else. So when we look at that then, and we see that we have these great people talking about your generation in such high esteem, how much of an impact has such on the generation to cause you all to have a motive to keep going? Because we hear about all these stories with the youth don't want to do this and whatever, and I'm still calling you youth because it's still relative. Everything is relative, right? But you all keep going and you all just keep prowling, and there isn't barriers that stop you all. You just find a way to keep going, and I'm sure that something is inspiring that.
I don't know. I mean, I think what it is I know the younger generation, like the millennials that we talk about now. Everybody talks about millennials, and sometimes not so favorable. And I think the difference between I forgive me because I don't have all the generations broken down, but
Mm-hmm.
like my generation of people, the early 1970s, born in that era, I think that we were born like the early 70s, early 80s were just like on the cusp of what we kind of understand as like old fashionedness now, right?
Right.
I mean, my children who are born with like iPads and swiping phones and all that kind of stuff like that, like that's a very different way of seeing the world. And I think that for people in my generation, there's like an equal balance of, yeah, we used to play basketball on the street and go run in the bush and do physical things because TV used to only come on at 5 o'clock in the afternoon and it only was on for 2 hours of the day. And you didn't really have this kind of like all these, I don't want to call them distractions.
Gadgets.
You had to be, there was a kind of an emotive kind of way of being in when we were young, which I think informs something, but then we're also not that old that the modern gadget world, as you put it, that way of thinking. So I think it's like this cocktail of the old and the new that sits in the generation of people who are my age, who kind of have the old school rigor of like saying, well, man, you gotta push through this thing. This thing is difficult. There's a way of kind of connecting with people, with a broader range of people. Whereas younger people have a slightly different, and I'm not being critical because I like to say a while ago that I feel like all my mentors are people who are younger than me, but which I mean, I don't even know if you could have a mentor that's younger than me, but a younger than me, I kind of think that I would like to think of the people who I look up to are people who are very young and doing inspirational things. But I think it's just a combination of looking at, growing up, having a slingshot in the bush and doing and making bow and arrows out of like, trees and pieces of string and flying kites. And also now being a more like tech-driven kind of person that is, very kind of modern and thinking, is the perfect cocktail, I think, that makes our generation kind of connect with people.
Yeah. And so with that in mind, then, is it important for persons to latch onto a suite of individuals who have performed excellently or are excellent in what they do and aspire to be like, or not like them, not as in duplicates, but to be able to function in an excellent manner like they do? Is that something that is critical for success?
I think, I mean, it's yes. My opinion, yeah, my opinion is yes. I feel that as much as you can look into your community, it's always very important for me. It's important to see yourself in a successful role, see aspects of yourself embedded in the success of people who really inspire you. And I think that's one of the great things about where we are now. You talked about generations before, but where we are now, there's so many examples of excellence and innovation and creativity and just resilience and kind of just participating in a dialogue that goes so much beyond the country, goes beyond the region, just goes into this international space. I think there's so many people in the country that really speak confidence and expose their complexity and expose their ideas in a way that it's very, very important for you to look at people and kind of recognize that nobody does anything in a vacuum. Like nobody does anything meaningful that doesn't recognize where his or her where the context of what they are coming from is.
Right.
Very, very provocative people and people who who their whole MO is to provoke people and to kind of create, to stir it up and whatever. But I firmly believe that we are only as good as the community and the platforms that you work within are. You you can. I mean, you might not know who these people are. You may only know about the famous person, but you don't know about the 10 people around who made that person believe that they can do what they do, and that's very, very important.
Awesome. So now that talks a little bit about your creative part of the bio, but I mean, we can't dismiss completely your legacy part of the bio, because I know you two have been like to follow me, and sometimes I think you follow me too much because you decided that you wasn't going to pay attention in school as much as you should have paid attention in school, in high school, which I didn't pay attention at all. But and so a lot of people were saying which you were going to come up and make yourself into, and you have gone a journey, a colorful journey that has taken you through becoming this rainmaker today, where you've gone through up to the NAJB as the chief curator, and then you went up to your business, pop-up studios, and then Bahamas borrowed you. I was going to say stole, but they borrowed you because you still have greater things to do after Bahamas. And that 3.5 billion entity made you their creative director. And you've done a lot of things at Bahamas with creating particularly all those thousands and thousands of art throughout the complex and culture, etc. But Rosewood has now honored you with a special honor. I think they call it a pacemaker. And, placemaker, right? Yeah. Which is even bigger. So tell us, how does that make you feel, considering some people were saying that you weren't going to amount to nothing when you was in high school?
Right. Well, I don't really think about the two things at the same time, but certainly the high school thing, I have thoughts on traditional education, that is for sure. Even in my 50-year-old body, I still look back at school and go, whoa, yeah, we need to be rethinking that, because that might be the root of a lot of challenges we have, but I'm not on the show to talk about that today.
Right.
Placemaker, I am very, very honored and humbled to be recognized as a placemaker for the Rosewood brand of hotels. It's not anything that you actively position yourself for. It's something that through observation, somebody nominates you to be a placemaker. And so just for context, so the Rosewood brand, I'm not sure the exact number of hotels that Rosewood has globally, but I think it's somewhere in the ballpark of like 40 or 50. So it's not a huge brand. It's extreme luxury boutique hotels or whatever around the world. And the placemaker program is given to individuals that they think have significantly contributed to the ethos of a particular hotel in a particular community culture. And it's about people who bring the culture into the experience of that hotel, because for Rosewood, their mantra is sense of place. So wherever the hotel is, no two of them look alike. There's not like and forgive me, I don't mean to disrespect the Starbucks, but when you go to Starbucks, like all Starbucks going to look the same, right?
Right.
Rosewood hotels don't look the same at all. They look very, very different. And so I was nominated by somebody who's a director of sales and marketing who doesn't work here. They work in an office in the States, but I had some interaction with them and they nominated me. And that nomination needed to be vetted by the headquarters of Rosewood, which is, I think they have two headquarters. The main one is in Hong Kong, and then they have the headquarters in Dallas, I believe. And so it needed to be vetted by the ownership group.
Right.
And then I was told, oh, you got accepted to be a placemaker. And I was like, oh, wow, that's very interesting. I mean, I had to know that I had made it through the phases. Right. I didn't know ultimately what was going to happen. And so here we are. So I'm very, very appreciative of that.
Well, that's great. That's great because, when we look at this, all this is telling me is that you found your niche and you didn't seek out that award. Like many people go for certificates and this and that and the other. That's something that people recognize you for what you did and what you bring to the table and so forth. And then they recommended you. So awesome. And
Thank you very much.
that tells me a little bit about those powerful words that you have in the bio when we talk about sovereign and independence and the like. So finding your niche, are those words important in finding your niche? Being sovereign, being independent, being activist. Because you found your niche, obviously, from high school to now, and
Right.
you were making waves, right?
I mean, I'm doing the best I can, right? So my daughter said something to me very, very interesting, like out of the mouths of babes. She said something to me when she was quite small, like years ago. And she said, "Daddy, if you're very good at something, does that mean that that's what you are?" And I thought, if you are very good at something, does that mean that that's what you are? And I was like, wow, like I don't even know how to respond to that. And I didn't really know what to say to her. I said, boy, but it's something that's stuck with me for a long time. And I thought, if you are blessed enough and you are lucky, you get to do what you are good at. And if you're very, very lucky, you're interested in what you get to do. And if that thing that you get to do is what you are very good at, you're very, very lucky. Because a lot of people don't have that. The chips don't line up that way. They do things that they feel like they have to do because they have a family or they have the next thing. And then what their interest is always this thing lingering in the back, right? Oh, when I get free, I'll do it when I do the next thing. So to your point about the words that are in my bio, yeah, I mean, I don't really sit around thinking about, I'm making waves or whatever, but I do think that I'm very lucky and very blessed that I'm very passionate about what I do. The work is very difficult. It's like, I always say, I like to use metaphors. It's like I see what I'm trying to do with the creative community, along with the creative community, is like turning a ship around in the harbor. And you see these big, big cruise ships, and then you see the tugboats like pushing the ships around, like to spin it around so they can back into the dock these huge ships. And sometimes ships have the motors that do it, but it's something that is not an overnight thing. And for me, just as a simple idea of what I'm trying to do, is that trying to inform the definition of who we are as Bahamians, because I'm very, very proud of my country. I'm very, very proud of all the accomplishments of all the people that do amazing things here. And I feel like we deserve to be a part of a global conversation because we are valid and we are interesting and we're complex and we're a diverse set of people. And I think through creativity, we probably best defined through culture, art, and creativity, the arts, we, in my opinion, is probably the most efficient and honest way to describe any set of people anywhere in the world. Look at the culture of a space, and look at how the people behave. Look at what the artists do. Look at what the musicians sing about, what they write about, how they play, what the poets are saying, what the artists are painting. Just look at it, right? And you can kind of see a strength in the people. And I think that as Bahamians, we have a strength that we don't even recognize the fullness of the strength yet. And so we need to agitate for people to understand, like, hey, you are a part of this conversation. There is a seat at the table for you to sit at, and you need to step into that seat and participate. And the arts, to me, are the best vehicle to kind of do that.
Right. Okay. And so you mentioned a number of times community, and Pop-Ups was pretty much a community center, and all intents and purposes. And you do everything by community from time, I could tell, even before you became the great John Cox. But when we look at that, then, what does it mean for the community, artist community, to be honored by Rosewood in this manner? Because it's not, like you always mention, it's not just you, it's a whole community effort. And so they are recognizing the community efforts in all intents and purposes.
Right.
So how does the community receive?
I think you're exactly right. Right. So none of what I'm doing I could do without the body of people that I work with. Right. I think I recognize how important that this community is one word. Community is one idea, which is pivotal. The other word I like to use is platform. Right.
Okay.
Like it's like the community. I cannot do anything. I have partnerships. We have all these artists. We have 112, 120 works on display at Rosewood. Most of them are on loan from a major collector. They're from about 50 different artists. So I could go through and name all the artists that we have. Max Taylor, we have Terry Lamar, we have Brent Malone, we have Dave Smith. I mean, it just goes on and on. Tessa Whitehead, and so on and so forth. Melissa Alcina, Kendall Hanna. And so every one of those people is such a powerful story. They represent such a powerful story that the combination of these things just being symbolically there, to me, I like to curate in a way that we build, right? So like whatever you see and you ask me to explain or to talk or tell you a story about Kendall Hanna or tell you a story about Heino Schmidt or tell you a story about Blake Fox or Antonius Roberts or whomever is on display there, I could just go on and on and on. So it's such a strong cast of characters that for me, I think people can tell when you do your job, when you're passionate about what you do, there's something about how you do it. I'm not like reciting some PowerPoint presentation that somebody told me to say to people, right? Like this is how I am, right? So this is, and I have to beg the forgiveness of people because I don't like that type of, I can tell when somebody's reading me a PowerPoint presentation. Like I want to know what they're saying. So, I'm only the sum of the parts, right? I mean, so I have a lot of partnerships and I feel like any recognition that I have received or have or may get in the future is really just about those types of things. That's what pop-up studios taught me. That's what working at COB in the late 90s taught me. Like where I recognized that the classroom was a platform. There's a field on top of which, the most amazing Super Bowl games as you watch it, they're played on a field. And somebody had to maintain that field, right? And so we're creating a field for great things to happen, right? And so that's what we're trying to do. And maybe Rosewood is another one of those fields,
Yeah, well, we're coming up on to commercial break, but before we do that, then let's just touch on this. Jackson Burnside made a powerful, I don't really call it a vision or whatever you want to call it, but it says that he said that by the year 2020, more persons will travel to the Bahamas for its art, culture, and heritage rather than for its sun, sand, and sea. Now, you mentioned some names just now, and Mr. Hanna, Kendall Hanna, has some very powerful pieces in front of the convention or in the convention center. I don't know if he has other pieces in other places, but when we look at that, then is this a part of the whole fulfilling of this prophecy? That's the word I was looking for, that he would have mentioned, and so forth.
Yes, I mean
from that perspective.
Yeah, Jackson's vision and his kind of premonition that this would happen is I think what drives me. It's what drives my team. I have a team filled with local creatives who have helped me. I mean, I've had people been in and on the team and moved on to do amazing things. But I think that really what we're trying to do is fulfill this vision. I mean, 2020 obviously has passed. 2020 was a very interesting year, but I don't think we should be caught up on literally interpreting this thing. What we are trying to do is, to me, how I kind of interpret this is, we're talking about updating the culture. We're talking about like in dynamic and honest and just kind of compelling and expansive ways, defining who we are as Bahamians. And I think that, as I mentioned before, the arts and culture and the heritage do that better than anything else. And arguably, they do them not in a way that undermines or diminishes the sun, sand, and sea, because that's just that's the part of the platform that's here, right? That's stunning. But I think that we need to make sure that we are always, when we peel back those layers of paradise, we recognize the complexity and the beauty of the people and the intelligence of the people who are here and operating on so many different levels. And I think that's really what Jackson was getting at. And so I think it's a lifelong pursuit to kind of do this, because we need to think about it, right? I mean, we need to, I know we have to go to our break, but I mean, I always say, to people when I'm giving them a tour here, I start it off and I say, if I go to some random place in the world and there's 100 people in the room, and I say, have you ever been to the Bahamas, or what can you tell me about the Bahamas? Probably 93, 94, 95 of those people are going to say, oh, I was on a cruise there, or I went on vacation there, or I went to my sister's wedding there. It's going to be something that drives them to be there in some kind of whimsical service industry context. Some of them are doctors. Oh, I'm doing research for the doctor. I have a banking thing going on. But the majority of people are going to be on that highway. And so that highway, as we progress as artists, is not often it's not often the thing that celebrates the complexity of the arts. It has not been that thing. I'm not a big, I don't like to criticize things. I have a friend
that's fine, because we can drill into that a little bit after.
Yeah. Okay.
Cool. So you've been listening to Something to Think About with Dale Happy Knowles, and we're here with John Cox, the great one. And we're talking about how smelling the excellence is all available for all of us. And so once we rise to that higher heights, then the whole country will rise and we will all be sitting on the beach with our little cabana. We'll be right back.
Sammy's Chicken. There's nothing like it.
Behind every scoop, lick, and savor is a smile and memory being made or reminisce. Whether you're at work, out with family on a Sunday, or have friends visiting, flavor will meet expectations in our 32-ounce container for only $10 if you're having a special event as well. Exotic flavors ranging from soursop to Guinness is definitely worthwhile.
Welcome back to Something to Think About with Dale Happy Knowles. We're here with John Cox, talking about how smelling excellence in Rosewood will help us all evolve. Welcome back, John.
Thank you. Welcome. Happy to be here.
Good. So as we're talking a little bit about the work in the show and the impact of going to an art and culture and heritage draw in the Bahamas, I believe that we are sitting on $100 billion economy. And the pillars of that economy is sun, sand, sea, people, and digital. And people, and the people I have in there, the orange economy, the creatives, etc., and all of the other things that go along with people and development of people and so forth. And so when we look at that, and we see what Jackson Burnside has said, and we have to ask them, can art, culture, and heritage be the major component for that economy, that $100 billion economy? And then is it Charlestown or Nassau, the magnet that we could create for that to happen?
Yes, I mean, so let me start with the back part. I mean, Charlestown is definitely a beautiful scenario, right?
Okay.
I do think that it could go beyond that, but Charlestown is definitely a good
starting point.
There's a lot of infrastructure that's already there, right? That makes that an interesting space. I think that the arts, going back to the first thing that you said, about the people and the creatives and the orange economy and all that kind of stuff. I think that what you're noticing is, in all aspects of life, the most creative people in whichever field they are in are the most successful ones, right? Whether you're in medicine, whether you're in law, whether you're in business, whether you're in technology, whether you're in this new metaverse world of things, the digital modern world.
Right.
Those people who are the most creative are the ones who create the paradigm shift. And so, having said that, I reinforce what Jackson said about art, culture, and heritage. Those people who understand those aspects of things tend to be the ones who make inroads in their practice and what they do, and make the greatest kind of contributions. Like, I've always thought, like, I'm not a political person at all, but I've always thought in every ministry there probably should be a sub-ministry of culture in every ministry, because it's how you get the work done, right? Because like you say, it's about the people. It's about culture. Is culture. Culture is what it is, right? It is historical. It is transactional. It is immediate. It's about what happens today. It's about what happened yesterday. It's about what people are thinking. It's not necessarily, I disagree with what people are thinking, so culture is only the stuff that I agree with.
Right.
Culture is what it is, the whole thing, right? So even what somebody said something really interesting the other day on a podcast I was listening to about, like, the gods, right? They use this term, the gods, and they said, you have these very bright and enlightened gods, but you also have these dark gods. And they said, people think that they can only learn things from the bright and enlightened gods, but not the dark ones. And they said, the ones who are really wise recognize that all of these scenarios are helping inform how you become a truer, more honest person. And I think with the creatives, with the creativity, what it does is it helps us see ourselves in a much more complex, powerful, validating way that fits our stories into the complexity of stories that are told all over the world, and makes us feel more confident about what we're doing. Not arrogant, but confident, and be able to kind of push forward, Like, I think that's really, really an important thing. And when we look at, I don't know, I just think it's about appreciating the wholeness of people, not just what grades did you get in school and how much money did you make, or all these other things like that. It's different. There's things about who we are and what we do and how we do it and how we pay attention to things, which are very, very important. And those are things that are starting to become more evident, and people pay more attention.
Yeah, I think people generally seem to get overflustered by money. Yeah, we all need money to live, but I mean, it could also cost you to kill yourself if you only focus on money, on making money, and not live in the process. So how do you enjoy the money when you get it, or whilst you're getting it, right? And so in the Caribbean, we've observed over the years traveling where they're very creative in producing products from the natural things that is found about them, whether it's the coconuts or whatever. They'll make 1,000,001 different products out of one coconut, where we seem not to have done that in the past, and so forth. So are we now looking to create incubators or an entrepot so that we could maximize all of the artistic, creative persons in the country so that we could then build this $100 billion economy through the things that you talked about? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think we still have ways to go with that. What I'm noticing is I'm seeing more innovation in food and beverage at the moment than I am in the visual arts. I mean, certainly I don't want to speak outside of my portfolio, so to speak. But what I notice is that I see like little companies popping up here and there, even if it's like, making healthy drinks or just like reimagining like food products and how these things work, and how we have access to them. I mean, one of the things with COVID, we've been through COVID. COVID really kind of like shifted the sand beneath our feet with how people who were going to get stuff done had to get it done. And it's just really interesting. You see these like little smaller platforms of just people eating things and having new takes on Bahamian food, but having like a modern, more healthy twist on things like that. And it just makes me go like, wow, like you see all these like successful people who are making good business sense out of food and beverage. Visual artists have always had the reputation that, visual artists make all this money, and because you're selling plastic things, right? You're transactional. Like if I give you a painting, you give me money. Much more difficult for musicians, right? What's the value of you playing the guitar for me when I could, listen to it online or whatever? But I think we're getting there. Happy. I think we have to keep pushing. And again, it's about platforms. I mean, we have the straw market downtown. Mm-hmm. If I might say so myself, I think that there's a lot of extremely talented people in the straw market doing things, but I think there needs to be a push. People need to be challenged. In order to be great, you need to be challenged. And I feel like sometimes there's not enough of a challenge there. And I think you have to be careful about how we measure the success of things. You have to it's not just about what people expect to get. It's not just about giving people what they expect. Because they might not expect the highest level or the most innovative things because they have a very low standard or expectation of what they're going to do. So I think that we're on the verge of we have huge potential for people to explore the possibilities of material that are, if you want to use the word indigenous, or if you want to just say that we have great access to imagine that. I think the fashion world, the apparel world, industrial design. I think we really need to be thinking about those possibilities. And that means that we need to get outside. We need to collaborate a little bit. I mean, I think, I'm very. There's an American designer who passed away recently. This guy called Virgil Abloh, who's just really got a very interesting background. And I'm listening to a lot of his podcasts and listening to interviews with him, and just like how we have to just think about how we can get things done and not get so bogged down in being so competitive with one another. I just like kind of recognize our own genius. And that was one of the things I was lucky enough to be able to work with Jackson quite a bit before he passed away. And we were trying to get the designation to be a creative city of design in the first instance. We ended up being a creative city of folk art and craft. And he actually passed away before we got the designation. But he would always say, the Bahamians have this like innovative way of doing everything, but they kind of downplay it themselves. Like they don't think it's sophisticated, or they don't think, oh, this is just me doing this other thing. And it's like, no, this is a whole way of solving problems, and we need to be able to kind of like believe in that and start to innovate and build real industry out of those things. And I think that's where we're going to hit those $1 billion numbers that you're talking about.
Yeah. No, I don't expect the $1 billion to come today, but I'm talking about working on building an intentional environment towards that, right? What I call the new built environment.
Yeah.
Not this new normal, which to me is going to take us back where we was before. So when we looked at the commercials just now, the second commercial was from Bunny Popple company. She is now not too long out of high school, and she has a company that is using the flavors and adapted into ice cream and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And so the market is, or the spectrum is huge for people to play in this green economy, orange economy, and so forth, and to be able to, some of the economies overlap, to tell you the truth. But but when Dominique was in at SAIC, I observed this artist sitting in the room after a talk, and when people came out of the room, he went and picked up all of the waste stuff that was in the room and some of the other scrap material and in the room. And when we came back, probably about half an hour later, he had this beautiful costume made. I call it a costume because I wouldn't wear it nowhere, but ladies could actually wear it out for a dinner thing. And they said that that's just how he thinks. He just goes in the room, he sees things, and 2 seconds later, he's. I think Mr. Han is similar like that too. But so how do we leverage that type of mentality and get that into more of our people? Seeing that you're saying that they're saying that we have these skills, but we may not have the confidence. I think that's the word that we could probably apply to it.
Yeah, I think we just need to reimagine the systems of intelligence, right? I mean, I think if we're going back to education, or I will touch on education a little bit. There's a famous educator called Howard Gardner, who had this concept called multiple intelligences, right? And he talked about, like, I don't remember all of them, but I think there was, in the beginning, maybe there was like 7 or 8, but then they expanded it to be more like people who learn visually or spatially or through sound,
right? Or
whatever.
Yeah.
And it was just basically different ways of people learning and expressing and functioning. And I think that we need to challenge the system that we push kids through to validate their position or their place in just a local community, but also in a broader dialogue,
right?
A broader space, if you will. So it's a lot happy for us to unpack, but I mean, I think we really just need to understand. I mean, I have 2 children who couldn't be any more different academically. And I have one who feels a lot like how I was in school. And I look back at school and go like, wow, that was just a hurdle to get over. Like, I mean, I think the only thing good about that is I think I could look at it and go,
you'd finish.
I finished it and I survived. And I guess that built a certain type of strength because it didn't feel relevant then. And I'm not sure it was relevant now. Like, I still don't think so. But we're still doing it though, right? And I think that people, when you talk about the student or whoever it was, when you were observing a talk and the person went and picked up waste material and did something, that's a way of thinking about things. And I think that, and what's encouraging to me is that more and more, I think people are paying attention to that type of thinking. To me, in the Howard Gardner context, that's a broader sense of intelligence, right? It's kind of going like, how do we do this? I mean, when we watch like the SpaceX things with Elon Musk, I know he's quite a controversial character, but you just think about it and you just go like, wow, like think of all the waste there was created when they would send vessels into space and all the fuselage would break off and just like all this stuff would just fall back into the ocean. And, he's like saying, no, we can bring these things right back. Almost, I think the last SpaceX exercise when they were like landing some of those pods back onto these platforms just beautifully so they could reuse them. I was almost more impressed with that than I was with the people going into space.
Going up.
Right? And I think that's actually really interesting that they made all these things, or people making fabric out of shoes out of plastic in the ocean, or all these things. I just think gets to be so interesting, and I feel like we just have so many resources here. I mean, it's one of the things that we're going to be doing, but my job is thinking about all the waste that comes out of a big resort. How can we repurpose that, create another platform that is just all about repurposing, recycling material, but not just in a way that we've taken junk and we're making more junk out of the junk. How do we make utilitarian things out of that in a way that makes us see the creativity in that, right? And I think that once we start to do that, and if we could just leave people alone a little bit, and imagine that there's people who think not like how we think, I think the world and this local community would get a lot more interesting. And we'll start to see more people succeeding, and people will then see people like themselves doing interesting things, and they'll go like, hey, this person has started a tea company, I could start a tea company. Or this person started making furniture, I could start making furniture. Or this person's making whatever it is, have a more innovative way to deliver food locally. Yeah, I can do that. So, and then why not start to export that? These ideas that we have are not just good for people who are from the Bahamas. A good idea is a good idea. In North America and South America, people start saying, hey, this guy in the Bahamas started to do it this way. What if we started to export our ideas?
And exporting creates wealth too, compared to just importing all the time. So when we look at it, all of this now, how are the developments in the creative community helping to contribute to making art, culture, and heritage come alive as being the prominent focus?
You mean like the institutions, you mean? Like that's
whether it's institutions, whether it's the artists programs that they have themselves, or it might be some of the heritage things, because we have a lot of heritage that we're not even touching on. I wouldn't even touch on the Christopher Columbus to do, because I think that it's almost $1 billion industry by itself, just the name, right? But we're not touching on things like that. But I'm just talking about in the creative space. There's a lot of, when you came home from school, there was only a few. You had the traditional ones who were doing the Ponciana trees and all these other things, but now you have people doing a whole scope of different flavors of art. Let me call it flavors, in that when you put ice cream in my head.
I think that the institute. I'm going to go back to institutions, because I think it's important for us to do that. Institutions are just made up of people, but I think that the steps institutions need to help create platforms to give people opportunities and enable them to explore, to experiment, to kind of come up with methods and ways of solving these problems that we have. When I say problems, I don't mean that in a negative way. I just mean like in the context of like innovation. And how we do that is, I think we need to start getting interesting. There's platforms that could probably participate in this that have no idea, right? You can't just say, oh, the NAGB is going to solve all of the creative problems, right? Because that's just not what's going to happen. The Diagolo Foundation is not going to solve all of them. COB isn't going to solve all of them. We need to start kind of lacing. I almost see it as like eyelets in a shoe. We are like lacing this, like all these eyelets are like different institutions, and we're like tying one shoe together in a way that makes that carves canals from one body of water to another body of water, which I think previously, had not had any connection, right? That's the thing. Like when you look at it, like oftentimes there's people want to bring like new ideas to the platform, and you recognize when you really explore that these things already exist. Shakespeare in Paradise exists, right? Nassau Music Society exists. The NAGB exists already. Now there's these new commercial galleries and all this other stuff, which I think is really interesting for artists, not just visual artists, but visual artists are getting the experience here to really explore what is market value, right? What is truly your value? How do you manage your business? How do you become a professional artist? What does that mean? How does one negotiate their own creative practice in a way that makes good sense for them, that is also responsible and consistent, that allows you to build on your business and not just be, kind of highly inconsistent. So I mean, I think that there's all kinds of things for us to do.
Yeah. So we see those things sort of happening in the financial space. With financial space, we have foundations and we have NGOs and the like, who are helping people do business plans and get over the hump business-wise and basics and stuff like that. And my take is that we need stuff like that to happen in the creative space, so that the artists who might have all this talent. I mean, I just look at the brothers in the shack, right? We look at them every day job and they say, oh, they're good for nothing, this and stuff like that. You put them in the shack and you see all kind of creativity coming out. So to me, it's just about mentorship, and somebody has to come up with the system, and I think it's NGOs and the like, to create spaces where they could shine, and then we will then develop. Everything else will follow, but we focus on the money first instead of the creating,
Right.
And then let the creation generate the money or draw the money, right?
Yeah, and I think we need to also be patient in the development of things. I was having a conversation with somebody, ironically, earlier today. We were looking at one of the forts, like walking through it in depth and saying, boy, like, this has so much potential. And I said, these spaces need to be curated. I said, these spaces really need to be curated. And I'm not saying that they're not, right, but I'm also saying that they need to be curated, right? I mean,
raise the bar. Yeah,
we look at them and go just like, wow, this is unbelievable. What is here? Like, how can we make this an experience that is sustainable? How can we create an inroad into the space? And this goes back to what I was saying before about Jackson art and culture and all these other things. It's not about like, oh, I work in Bahamas, so I'm trying to say everybody should come to Bahamas because that's what the art is. That's not the idea at all. It's that we're spawning all of these things that are happening, and we could create this complex network of districts and cities and just systems of connection that will cause people to associate certain types of experiences with the Bahamas that they don't normally do now.
Right.
And to your point, those guys in the shack, those people who are making their switcher and doing whatever, there's ways to bring that stuff into like a contemporary way of thinking that really is a business-minded way for people to just, like you say, not just make a living, but to kind of validate their own existence in spaces. And we have so much stuff. There's so many stories to tell. The landscape is just ripe. It's like a seed, like waiting to burst through the horizon into this wonderful kind of fruited plant. And we need to really think about how that works. It's not a one-dimensional thing. It's not about, oh, I gave you a grant, here's $10,000, do something. It needs to be ongoing. It needs to continue. One thing needs to lead into another thing. And then we were creating systems of leaders who could continue to lead and make things happen,
Yeah. So when we look at that, then we have the private sector has a role to play, and then you also have, I guess, the government should have a role to play in creating policy, at least at minimum, to allow these industries to flourish. So how is that coming along? Is that something that needs a lot of attention, or that's running now and at the right pace that it needs to run?
I don't necessarily I think the private sector part of it is something that probably has more potential at the moment, because I think that you can negotiate in different ways, right? And the private sector it's not unfortunately marred by the political cycle.
Right. Okay.
Unfortunately, the political cycle is so detrimental to ideas because ideas take time to develop.
Right.
And they need not be marred by, ego, which I think is which I think unfortunately disrupts the necessary growth cycle for a lot of ideas.
Okay.
So I'll just leave that alone. But
Yeah.
I think that there are opportunities to engage the private sector in a way that can be more sustainable in the long run for communities to develop, right? There's foundations, there's the knowledge of institutions and where institutions need help. It's not always money that they need. Sometimes they need ideas. They need administrative framework, right? They need policy that kind of helps say, oh yeah, we can do this, or this is an opportunity. They need to be given an open door to do something, right? So where a place like some of the things we try to do is like where creatives would not normally be able to afford the platform to do what they do, we make the platform free. We say, well, you can just do it for free. So here, I'm not necessarily giving you any money, but I'm taking away the money that you'd have to spend to do this thing, and you can just go for yourself. How do we look back into the community and see how we can work? And then I'm an optimist, right? I think that we need to think about people who are in government in a way that government can be very, very helpful. It has to be. I mean, because government is where policy can be made, where laws can be made. That would enhance things. I mean, just import duties, just opportunities, new development, having to say every development over X $1 million, this % of the overall cost of the project needs to go towards cultural development, whether you embed it into the infrastructure of what the project is, or it goes into the community, or maybe it's a little bit of both. And then you because that's how we have to start thinking about things. So you have to stop thinking that art and culture is and heritage is the seasoning that goes on the meat. Art, culture, and heritage is the actual meat.
Right. So you talked about the youth in the industry, and when I say youth, I mean youth in terms of maturity, of knowing how to do this and how to do that and the like. And so whether it's sell art, purchase art, whether it's create certain type of things or whatever it is. Would a art exchange help?
What do
I
you
call
mean
it a small to medium sized artist, more so than anybody else, to have some sort of structured system where they could place their art, and then people would be able to see it through a portal or whatever it is, and have explanations of it, or even virtual
I
talks
think
of it, and the like, so that somebody could guide them through it. Particularly, I would think that those out of high school and those who might be trying to figure out what they want to go off to school to do, if they can go off to school. This might be a means to get them off to school, right?
Right. Yes. I mean, so the answer to that is yes. So I do think that a dynamic art, you use the term exchange. I think basically what it is, we need to understand and work with the emergence of successful commercial galleries, right?
Okay.
I think basically what we've had, the National Gallery of the Bahamas is somewhat misleading, because the National Gallery is actually a museum. It's not it's their mandate is not to sell artwork. It is to promote it, to preserve, to expose, to educate, and so on and so forth. So what we've seen the uptick of a very, very high level of art making that lives in a museum type of environment, where the return, or the measure from which this artwork is most successful is a critical one.
Right.
Is one where the artwork speaks to history, it critiques the system, it's all of these things. But where and I like to use the metaphor that the empty seat at the adult table in the local art community is the one that has commercial on the nameplate. The name tag says commercial in the plate.
Right.
Because people have a difficult time understanding that. That has been something that artists, visual artists, and other artists have shied away from, because if you're commercial or you sold out or you've lost your integrity or you've watered down your audience too much, you have a broader base of audience that some people who could not possibly understand what your work is are also wanting to buy it. You have that on one side of the pendulum, and you have the other side of the pendulum, which is people who just sell anything to anybody. Both of those ideas are not doing justice to the middle, which actually builds the economy, right? It's the middle way. And I think that we're seeing the emergence of new galleries come on the scene. Certainly, the central bank has been doing a great job with exhibitions for years and years. But the challenge with the central bank, and I love the central bank, is the central bank is not a commission-taking space. The central bank is not need to sustain itself.
Right.
When you have an entity that needs to sustain itself with collaboration or through collaboration with other creative bodies, a new dynamic exists, which is more consistent with one that is more global and regional. And that's something that we're seeing. And we have the challenge at the current. There's the Turn Gallery, there's the CAD Gallery, which is new. And I think artists are having to truly understand their own value, understand their own production, right? I mean, I sometimes will have opportunities for artists, and somebody will come and say, I need an artist to do this, this, and this. And I need 500 of them. And the artist is like, oh my goodness, I can't make 500 of these things. And I'm like, well, you need. I think that we're on a learning curve, and the more people start to learn those things, the more sustainable and more robust the community is that we're going to get. But you know who's learning it? These F&B guys who have these successful, the new Duff and all these other kind of ideas. Right. These people, they're getting it. And our visual artists have been successful in other ways before, need to start understanding some of this like business 101 stuff, but not forget their creativities.
Right.
And go from there. And then I think we'll start to see a more sustained things. Artists could be making $100,000 easy a year if they just think about it. How many paintings do I want to sell? Who do I think is my market? Am I going to sell 5 $20,000 paintings? Am I going to sell 2 $50,000 paintings? Am I going to sell 100 $1,000 paintings? Or 200 $500 paintings? Like, how am I going to get them out? And where am I selling them? And do I have a platform? And can I sell them to this guy who is designing something in Los Angeles? Why not? Right? And so the digital platform and all these things, this is how it's your phone. You probably could do this from your phone,
Yeah.
We'll get there. Well,
that's very good that we will get there. And I'm glad that you're showing helping persons out there to see how they could smell the excellence coming their way from the aroma of Rosewood, and so forth. And folks, we're gonna wrap up shortly. But if you have any questions that you wanted, I should have asked this earlier of John, then please do hit them up so that we could get them done for you. But as we roll on now, John, how or where do we go from here? We now, you are, like you say, hitting the halfway mark, and so you've been in the industry as at least 30 years. People before you, and so now we have another 100+ years ahead of us that we should be planning for. So, how do we guide that? or how do we inspire what should happen in that direction?
Happy. I think we need more administrators. I think we need more systems that will enable people to find themselves. Right. As much as I want to say we need to have more artists, I don't know that we need more. I think artists are going to spawn like
Happen.
bunny rabbits. They're just going to happen. But the problem is if you just have more artists and you don't have the platforms or the galleries or the institutions or the business models in order for them to shine, right? We need to make the Colosseum, right, in order for all these gladiators to be awesome, right? So, and I think the Colosseum is made with baby steps and with giant leaps. I think that we need to use the big agencies that I have. Like right now, I have big agency around me. So I need to capitalize on what I can do with the time that I have here. But the person also who has, the street corner kiosk also needs to recognize that power. And we see it. I see it all the time. I see furniture designers, Daniel Belton, with amazing stuff, making furniture out of cut,
welcome to stamps. You're saying business 101. Yeah, that's big. Do we have those in the you taught at UB, University of Bahamas? Are the artists required to take any business courses?
At the moment when I was teaching, they were not. I think that no, they're not. I think that a business program, a professional practice program, would probably fit more into a 4-year program. Unfortunately, UB is still teaching on an associate program. The BFA has been something that has been on the books for a while. But you can take business courses as an elective, but you need to be guided. Somebody who is your guidance counselor or whatever needs to be saying, "Hey, I would do this," because people think when they're in the art department, all they should be taking is studio classes and be walking around with paint on their face, which is probably not a great solution, right? Go to your business class with the paint on your face, and then you'll probably be the one that's most successful. So
I laugh because I saw that actually happen. Somebody walking around UB with paint on the face.
Yeah. I think we need that collaboration. We need that intersection of worlds that previously need to bring them together.
Cool. It sounds like we get enough to go for the next 100 years, and so I think we need to be like the Chinese and map it out as much as we can, even though it's a fluid environment, the creative environment, and we encourage the creativity, and because if that's that creativity is what comes from within. At least that's my impression, being an engineer in that space. So, John, what we'd like to do is ask you now if there's anything that you would like to say. I mean, I know you had a lot to say, but is there anything other than what I asked you about that you'd like to say to the public?
I mean, I just want people to stay connected. I mean, that's the thing. I need as much encouragement, just like every other artist needs as much encouragement as possible. Keep open minds, like listen to everybody. Give people an opportunity to be there. Listen to those little kids who don't do well in school. That's a common denominator. The people who do great things, most of them say, "Oh, I didn't do that well in school." Think about that. You know what I mean? Like I think we really, really need to think about that. We're making people into we're making them extraordinarily mediocre.
Making them robots, right?
Yeah,
and they're living a life that's not theirs. Yeah,
you're playing the midfield. I know midfielders are important, but you need to go on the attack. You know what I mean? You need to go on the attack. Or if you can play defense, play defense. But come on, make the statement. Don't be afraid to fail. There's not enough failure. That's the last thing I have to say. If you ask me if I have parting words. Do not be afraid to fail when you're in school. You have to push that. You have to really push that.
I will add that don't be afraid to fail, period, because failure to me is the foundation of success. You can't have success without failure.
Exactly.
And so forth. But thank you kindly for joining us this evening and being so generous with all your thoughts and ideas and what needs to happen. And I know you don't like talking about yourself when I press you at the beginning, but sometimes you just got to do that for the benefit of the people out there.
Yeah.
And so thank you kindly again. Everybody out there in Facebook, YouTube, and the like. Be sure to reach out to John at the current Bahamas. If you have ideas that you want to bounce past him, I'm sure he'll be open to receiving them and so forth. Say hello to everybody. Be safe, everybody. Madam Producer, take us away.
Thank you.
Enjoyed the show? Then subscribe to us for more educational and inspirational content. Ring the bell so you never miss a show. Let's change the narrative, 242.